Imagine for a moment. You wake up in a world where nothing you thought was true about history has been turned on its head. The history books you once trusted now seem to hide more than they reveal. In the depths of ancient civilizations, there are whispers of stories that were never meant to be told. Stories so terrifying that they have been systematically erased, ignored, and obscured. What if I told you that there was an entire civilization whose power, wisdom, and terrifying rituals were buried so deeply that their existence almost slipped through the cracks of time itself? What if I told you that a great empire, once teeming with life and advanced knowledge, was completely wiped from history? But the truth they found was something so horrifying, so unnerving, that it almost made the rest of humanity wish it stayed hidden forever. Now think about this. How much do you trust the versions of history you've been taught? How many parts of the past have been lost to us, deliberately forgotten, ignored, or concealed? The world of the ancients was not the benign, primitive place we often imagine. It was one filled with dark secrets, where knowledge was both a weapon and a curse, and where entire civilizations were erased, their stories buried under layers of sand, stone, and the passage of time. In this story, we're going to take a journey through the hidden pages of history. It's not the history that you think you know. It's not the one they taught you in school. This is a tale of lost civilizations, forgotten knowledge, and the terrifying truth that was too dangerous for the world to remember. In this journey, you'll meet forgotten figures whose lives were far more extraordinary and far darker than the history books have let on. You'll uncover secrets about ancient rituals, strange survival methods, and disturbing societal norms. Some of these are so chilling that historians for decades preferred to keep them locked away in dusty archives, rather than risk disturbing the fragile narrative of human progress. But these secrets are emerging. It's time to peel back the layers of time and discover what has been left in the shadows. Get ready, because what lies ahead will reshape everything you thought you knew about our ancient past. Long before the Great Pyramids were ever built, and far before the rise of the ancient Egyptians or the Greeks, there existed a civilization so mysterious, so elusive, that even the most brilliant minds of history dismissed it as legend. This was Ubar, the Atlantis of the Sands, a fabled city that vanished into the desert in a single catastrophic moment. It was a kingdom that thrived in the harshest of environments, prospering due to its control over one of the most precious commodities of the ancient world, frankincense. Ubar was known to the ancient world as a hub of trade, a city where the gods themselves were said to visit. Located somewhere deep in the Arabian Peninsula, it was described by the likes of Herodotus and Homer, though no one could quite agree on its exact location. For centuries, the tale of Ubar was dismissed as myth, a mere fantasy created by poets and travelers. But in the 1990s, something extraordinary happened. A team of archaeologists armed with modern technology uncovered traces of a massive civilization buried under the sands of Oman. It wasn't just a small settlement. It was a sprawling city, complete with streets, grand buildings, and evidence of advanced engineering. The ruins were remarkably well preserved, enough so that it was clear Ubar had once been a thriving metropolis. But this discovery raised more questions than answers. How did such a powerful civilization, one that controlled vast wealth, simply vanish from history? What was most disturbing was the suddenness of the fall. Ancient texts spoke of a catastrophic event, where the ground itself swallowed the city. But the questions lingered. Was it an act of nature, or was something far darker at play? Had the people of Ubar delved too deeply into forbidden practices? Did they possess knowledge or power that was too dangerous to wield? What made Ubar's fall even more unsettling was the realization that its disappearance was not an isolated event. Other civilizations, seemingly unrelated, also faced similar fates, where they vanished from history in the blink of an eye. What was it that these ancient people were involved in that could lead to such a total and irreversible erasure from history? As researchers dug deeper, they unearthed strange artifacts and symbols, relics of a time when the kingdom of Ubar had believed itself invincible. There was evidence of ritualistic practices, sacrifices, offerings to gods whose names have long since been forgotten, and artifacts that seemed to suggest they were dabbling with forces beyond human comprehension. Perhaps most disturbing of all was the discovery of an ancient text, etched in stone, that told of a civilization's desperate attempts to control the very fabric of time itself. Could the people of Ubar have been trying to unlock powers that were never meant to be wielded by mortal hands? Was it this ambition that led to their downfall? And if so, could it be that the ancient city of Ubar was not merely lost to history, but actively erased by forces greater than anyone could have imagined? As we peer into the ruins of Ubar, one truth becomes apparent. The past was far more mysterious and far more dangerous than we have ever been told. And the secrets of this lost civilization might just be more terrifying than we ever thought possible. The Scythians were a people shrouded in mystery, an ancient civilization of warrior nomads who once dominated the vast expanses of the Eurasian steppes. Their story has been all but forgotten by modern history, overshadowed by the more famous empires of Rome, Persia, and Egypt. But what if I told you that the Scythians, whose legends were written in the annals of Herodotus and other ancient historians, had a much darker secret than anyone could have imagined? The Scythians were known for their fearsome warrior culture and their astonishing ability to ride horses with a mastery that no other civilization could rival. Yet there was another side to them, an ancient shrouded practice that reached far beyond the scope of simple warfare. The Scythians practiced an intense, chilling form of ritual sacrifice, one that involved the offering of both human and animal lives in the pursuit of immortality. These rituals were conducted in secret, away from the eyes of outsiders, and few survived to tell the tale. One such tale comes from the ancient historian Herodotus, who described a terrifying custom practiced by the Scythian priestesses known as the Amazons. These women, believed to wield extraordinary power over life and death, would perform rituals that involved the bloodletting of prisoners, often under the light of the moon, to appease their gods and to secure the warrior's strength in battle. But there was a deeper aspect to these practices. They believed that by consuming the blood and flesh of their victims, they could unlock eternal life. Historians have debated for centuries the true nature of these rituals. Did the Scythians truly believe that immortality could be attained through such macabre means? Or was this merely symbolic, a metaphor for the warrior spirit they revered so deeply? Whatever the case, the Scythians were undeterred. They even created a cult of death that blended the supernatural with the earthly, believing that the power to transcend death was within their grasp. This obsession with immortality wasn't limited to priestesses alone. Kings and warriors, too, would undergo rituals designed to grant them divine favor, hoping that the gods would grant them an extended life, free from the limitations of mortal existence. But then, As the Scythians faded from history, these practices vanished as well, leaving behind only cryptic remains, strange burial mounds, and scattered relics. For years, the truth about their rituals was dismissed as mere superstition or misinterpretation. But recent archaeological discoveries, including the unearthing of royal tombs and sacred altars, suggest that the Scythians were indeed onto something far darker than anyone realized. The rituals they practiced were more than just offerings. They were attempts to bridge the gap between life and death, between human and divine, in a way that no civilization before them dared to explore. And yet, it seems that the price of such forbidden knowledge was too high. The Scythians' obsession with immortality ultimately led to their downfall. Could their dangerous practices have caught the attention of more powerful enemies, leading to their eventual disappearance from the historical record? Or, perhaps, was there something even more sinister at play? Their very pursuit of immortality, ultimately breaking the fabric of their civilization, resulting in its complete erasure from history. The mystery of the Scythians is not just a story of nomadic warriors and their fierce battles. It's a story of a civilization driven by a desire to conquer death itself. And in their blind pursuit, they may have unlocked doors that were never meant to be opened. The question remains, what happened when they finally crossed that threshold? The Library of Alexandria is perhaps the most famous lost treasure of antiquity. Founded in the 3rd century BCE, it was a beacon of learning, a grand repository of knowledge that promised to illuminate the mysteries of the world. Its halls were said to house hundreds of thousands of scrolls containing the collected wisdom of the ancient world. From the earliest writings of the Sumerians to the philosophical works of Greece and Egypt. But we all know what happened next. The library was destroyed, first by fire, then by neglect, and finally by the waves of time. What remains of the Library of Alexandria today is little more than myth, its treasures lost to history forever. But what if the destruction of the library wasn't just a tragic accident? What if there was more to the story, something darker, something that the world has been too afraid to acknowledge? Recent historical and archaeological research has begun to uncover evidence that suggests the Library of Alexandria was not merely a collection of ancient scrolls. It was a repository of powerful hidden knowledge. The texts stored within its walls were not just mundane works of philosophy or science. Many of them were said to contain esoteric wisdom, forbidden rituals, and knowledge that could manipulate the very forces of nature. The library wasn't just a place of learning. It was a crucible for dangerous, arcane knowledge. Among the lost works believed to have been housed in Alexandria were the writings of the ancient mystics, the so-called Hermetic text, which delved into the secrets of alchemy, astrology, and divine magic. These texts described rituals that could alter the course of destiny, summon forces beyond human comprehension, and even bring about divine intervention. The secrets contained within these scrolls were said to hold the power to transform the world itself. And yet, despite the incredible potential of these texts, they were lost, not just once, but many times. The library's destruction was no mere accident. Some scholars believe that the burning of the library was orchestrated by powerful forces who wanted to ensure that this knowledge remained hidden forever. What if, instead of a tragic fire, the destruction of the Library of Alexandria was an act of deliberate suppression, an attempt by secret societies or political elites to erase the knowledge of the ancients and keep humanity from unlocking its true potential? The most unsettling possibility is this. What if the knowledge contained in the Library of Alexandria wasn't lost at all? What if the secret societies that held sway over history still possess fragments of these ancient texts, hidden away from public view, safeguarded by a select few who understand the true power of what was once housed there? Could the people who control these secrets be using this forgotten knowledge to shape the world in ways we cannot even imagine? The destruction of the Library of Alexandria is not just a sad chapter in the history of the ancient world. It's a symbol of how dangerous knowledge can be, and how powerful forces have always been willing to go to great lengths to suppress it. And the question remains, what other ancient truths are still being hidden from us, just beyond our reach? The Inquisition is one of the darkest chapters in the history of Europe, often remembered for its religious zeal and fanatical desire to root out heresy. The Inquisition remains a symbol of brutal power and unrelenting fear. For centuries, the Catholic Church led a campaign to purify the world of heretics, witches, and other perceived threats to the faith. But what if I told you that the true horrors of the Inquisition go far deeper than the public records ever revealed? The most infamous aspect of the Inquisition was its use of torture. Under the guise of rooting out heresy and maintaining religious purity, the Inquisition created a system where anyone could be accused of heresy and subjected to unspeakable torments. The torture was not just about extracting confessions. It was a systematic, state-sanctioned campaign to break the will of the accused, to force them into submission, and to instill a deep, unshakable fear in the population at large. But what if the Inquisition didn't just aim to suppress dissent? What if it was also an attempt to suppress knowledge? Knowledge that threatened the power of the Church itself? Some historians have suggested that the Inquisition was about more than just enforcing religious dogma. It was about control. The Church was the greatest power in Europe, and any knowledge that might challenge its authority had to be eradicated. The Inquisition went after anyone who posed a threat, from philosophers and scientists to women who were accused of witchcraft for simply practicing herbal medicine. One of the most disturbing aspects of the Inquisition was its long-lasting impact. Entire generations were raised in fear, knowing that the Church could, at any time, accuse them of heresy. Entire communities were destroyed, their histories erased, and their knowledge lost forever. The impact of the Inquisition was not just physical, it was psychological. The trauma it caused echoed through the centuries, shaping the very foundations of modern Western thought. And yet, despite the horrors it inflicted, the Inquisition was largely seen as a necessary evil by those in power. The Church justified its actions by claiming it was preserving the sanctity of the faith. But the truth is far more sinister. It was a system of control, designed to keep the masses in line and to prevent any knowledge that might threaten the status quo from taking root. The Inquisition was not just about torturing individuals. It was about shaping the future of an entire civilization, one confession at a time. The true horrors of the Inquisition are not just the screams of the tortured, but the way it changed the course of history, leaving behind a legacy of fear, control, and lost knowledge. The Mayan civilization, with its awe-inspiring cities, vast networks of trade, and remarkable achievements in science, art, and architecture, has long been one of the most enigmatic cultures of the ancient world. But there was something far darker and far more unsettling about the Mayans than most people realize. Beyond their monumental pyramids and intricate calendrical systems, the Mayans had a chilling obsession with time, specifically with predicting its end. For centuries, scholars have marveled at the Mayan long count calendar, a complex system that tracked the cycles of the cosmos with staggering accuracy. But what truly set the Mayans apart was their belief that these cycles were more than just arbitrary measures of time. They believed that time itself was a living, breathing entity, something that could be understood and manipulated. They didn't simply observe time, they sought to control it, to bend it to their will. The most unsettling aspect of the Mayan calendar was its end date, a precise moment in time that the Mayans predicted would mark the end of the world. December 21st, 2012 was famously identified as this end date, sparking global panic and wild theories about apocalyptic scenarios. But the real question remains, what did the Mayans actually know about time? And why did they believe the world would come to an end at a specific moment? Recent excavations of Mayan temples, tombs, and artifacts have suggested that the Mayans believed they were part of a cosmic cycle, and that their civilization was destined to play a role in the very fate of the universe itself. The Mayans didn't just predict the end of the world, they believed they could influence it, shaping the outcome with their rituals and offerings to the gods. The idea that they might have harnessed some deep hidden understanding of cosmic forces raises unsettling questions about the true nature of their civilization. There is evidence that the Mayans practiced dark, bloodthirsty rituals meant to appease their gods and maintain cosmic balance. Human sacrifices, often performed at the tops of their grand pyramids, were believed to be a way of resetting the balance of time, to ensure that the cycles would continue uninterrupted. But what if these rituals weren't just about appeasing the gods? What if they were about controlling the flow of time itself, or even preventing a disastrous end? And what about the fate of the Mayan civilization? Despite their profound understanding of time, the Mayans themselves mysteriously vanished from the historical record, their cities abandoned and their knowledge lost. Could the collapse of the Mayan civilization have been a result of their own obsession with time, a final attempt to control forces beyond their understanding? Did the Mayans push the boundaries of their knowledge too far, and in doing so, destroy their civilization? The truth about the Mayans' relationship with time may be darker and more terrifying than we ever imagined. The ancient Egyptians have long been the subject of fascination with their towering pyramids, grand tombs, and vast wealth. But behind the allure of their great civilization lies a disturbing truth. The rulers of ancient Egypt may have been more than just powerful kings. They were living conduits for dark forces. The legendary Curse of the Pharaohs is perhaps the most chilling aspect of Egypt's ancient power, a curse believed to have befallen those who dared to disturb the tombs of the pharaohs. The most famous victim of this curse was Lord Carnarvon, the British aristocrat who funded the 1922 discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Just days after the tomb was opened, Carnarvon fell mysteriously ill and died. Within weeks, several other members of the excavation team were struck by illness or death. The press had a field day, sensationalizing the story and attributing the deaths to the wrath of the pharaohs. But was there more to this curse than mere coincidence? The Curse of the Pharaohs is not a new concept. It dates back to the time of the ancient Egyptians themselves. In fact, the Egyptians were deeply superstitious and believed that disturbing the tombs of the dead would invoke divine retribution. Ancient texts describe the curses placed upon royal tombs, warning of dire consequences for anyone who dared to desecrate the resting places of the kings. But what if these curses weren't simply superstitions? What if there was something far darker at play? Something far beyond the understanding of the ancient Egyptians themselves? Some researchers believe that the ancient Egyptians were aware of forces that modern science has yet to comprehend. The tombs of the pharaohs were not just burial sites. They were complex spiritual and magical constructs, designed to protect the kings in the afterlife and to harness the power of the gods. The idea of the curse could be seen as a warning, not just of divine retribution, but of the powerful, unseen forces at work within the tombs. But what if the true nature of these forces was even more sinister? What if the curse wasn't just a warning? It was a real, tangible power that could affect those who came into contact with it. Some have speculated that the ancient Egyptians may have created a kind of magical protection around their tombs, using dark rituals to ensure that no one would ever disturb their resting places. But what if these rituals went even further, channeling powers beyond the realm of the living? Could the ancient Egyptians have discovered how to tap into forces that modern science can't explain? Powers that still lurk in the shadows of history, waiting for the right moment to resurface? When most people think of ancient Rome, they think of grandeur, immense colosseums, towering temples, and the glory of the Roman Empire at its height. But behind the facade of Roman power and civilization lay a series of disturbing and forgotten rituals, practices so dark that they were purposely erased from history. These were the rites that Rome's elite performed in secrecy, rituals that involved blood, sacrifice, and forces of nature that were better left undisturbed. One such practice was the Sacrum Urbs, a secret ceremony held once every year to ensure the city's continued prosperity and protection. This ancient rite was performed by Rome's most powerful senators and officials, involving a complex series of sacrifices to the gods, not just of animals, but of human lives. The most disturbing part? These sacrifices were not isolated incidents, but part of a larger, intricate system meant to maintain the city's status as the greatest power the world had ever seen. The details of these rituals remain scarce, but what little evidence exists points to the use of dark supernatural forces that Roman elites believed would protect the empire from disaster. These rituals were conducted under the cover of night, in secret locations away from the eyes of the public. Only a select few knew the true nature of the ceremonies, and it's believed that they were passed down through generations, hidden in the most guarded corners of Roman society. It wasn't just the common people who feared these rituals. It was the emperor himself. Several emperors, particularly during the height of the empire, became obsessed with immortality and divine favor. Some would even go to great lengths to try to secure eternal life, consulting with mystics, astrologers, and magicians. Emperor Nero, notorious for his cruelty, reportedly sought out these dark rituals, believing that the gods could grant him not just power, but immortality. But, as with many things, in ancient Rome, these practices came at a price. Rome's obsession with supernatural forces may have been the very thing that caused its eventual downfall. The empire, so consumed with the quest for power and eternal life, ignored the very real and devastating weaknesses that plagued it: corruption, internal strife, and a failing system of governance. The empire's rulers, obsessed with ancient rituals and the occult, sealed their own fate by losing sight of the world they had built. Rome's dark rituals are not just a footnote in the history of the empire. They represent a terrifying and largely forgotten side of Roman society, one that delved deep into forces beyond the human realm and ultimately paid the price for it. In 1587, a group of English settlers arrived on the shores of the New World, eager to establish the first permanent English colony in North America. Their settlement, located on Roanoke Island in what is now North Carolina, was meant to be a new beginning for the English Empire. But by 1590, when a resupply mission arrived to check on the colony, it was completely deserted. No sign of life remained except for a single clue, the word Croatoan, carved into a post. What happened to the settlers of Roanoke remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. Over the years, theories have swirled about the fate of the lost colony, ranging from attacks by Native Americans to the settlers simply abandoning their post and blending into surrounding tribes. But what if the truth was something far darker, something far more terrifying than anyone ever imagined? Recent archaeological discoveries and re-examinations of old records suggest that the settlers of Roanoke may not have been killed or simply vanished. They may have been involved in something much more sinister. Among the ruins of the colony, there have been discoveries of strange artifacts, unusual carvings, remnants of old rituals, and signs of what appears to be an ancient belief system far removed from Christianity. Did the settlers, desperate for survival, fall into the grasp of something darker, some kind of supernatural force or ancient cult that consumed them? Furthermore, the word Croatoan itself holds a dark significance. It was the name of a nearby Native American tribe, but some scholars believe the word may have been a clue left by the colonists themselves, hinting that they had fallen under the sway of a darker influence, possibly even some form of ancient voodoo or paganism practiced by the Croatoan people. Could the settlers have been caught in an otherworldly ritual, one that led them to be absorbed into the tribe, or worse, sacrificed to some malevolent entity? The lost colony of Roanoke isn't just a story of a failed settlement. It is the eerie tale of a group of people who may have met their end not by war, disease, or starvation, but by a far more chilling fate, one that transcends mere human conflict and ventures into the realm of the supernatural. The Vikings are often remembered as fearsome warriors, their long ships cutting through the seas, striking terror into the hearts of their enemies. Among the most terrifying figures in Viking lore were the Berserkers, warriors said to fight with an almost supernatural rage, impervious to pain and capable of incredible feats of strength. But what if this berserker rage was not just the result of warrior training, but something far darker? The Berserkers were not ordinary warriors. They were said to enter a trance-like state during battle, where they would howl, foam at the mouth, and fight with a frenzied fury that was almost inhuman. They were believed to be able to endure wounds that would kill normal men, and they seemed to be fueled by an unstoppable bloodlust. Some accounts even suggest they would wear the pelts of wolves or bears, taking on the spirit of these animals in battle. But how did they achieve this terrifying transformation? Historians have long speculated that the berserker rage was a result of drugs or rituals. Some theories suggest that they consumed hallucinogenic mushrooms, like the Amanita muscaria, which could cause violent outbursts and alter their perception of pain. Other accounts suggest that the berserkers may have been part of a religious cult, invoking the gods to give them their strength. But there is also evidence that the berserkers' bloodlust was a product of something even darker, an ancient and forgotten ritual. Recent studies of Viking burial sites have revealed that some berserkers were buried with strange, ritualistic objects, such as amulets, bones, and animal remains. These objects hint at the possibility that the berserkers may have been involved in occult practices, invoking dark gods or spirits to grant them power in battle. The idea of a warrior who willingly gives up his humanity in exchange for supernatural strength is not unique to Viking lore. Similar practices have been observed in other ancient cultures, where warriors would seek to channel dark forces in order to achieve victory. But what if the berserkers were not merely warriors? They were vessels for something darker, something that used them to carry out an ancient blood ritual. Some scholars suggest that the berserkers' wild, unrelenting rage may have been a side effect of their participation in these dark rituals. Could the berserkers have been manipulated, controlled by an unseen force, driven to fight not for their own glory, but for something far more sinister? The berserkers' terrifying abilities may not have been the result of physical prowess alone. They could have been the product of a civilization that sought to harness the powers of darkness itself. The Tower of London is one of the most famous landmarks in England, a symbol of royal power, treachery, and betrayal. But beyond its role as a royal residence and prison, the tower holds dark secrets. Secrets that have been hidden for centuries, buried beneath layers of stone and blood. For centuries, the tower was the site of unspeakable horrors, from political executions to the torture of prisoners who were never meant to be remembered. But what if the true horrors of the Tower of London are even darker than we've been led to believe? The tower's history is filled with tales of tragedy, betrayal, and death. It was here that Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VIII, was executed, her head severed from her body in a brutal public execution. It was here that countless prisoners were tortured, their screams echoing through the stone halls. But what if the tower held even darker secrets? Secrets that have been deliberately suppressed? The tower was not only a prison, but also a place of dark rituals and occult practices. It was here, in the heart of London, that the English monarchy secretly conducted rituals designed to solidify their power and ensure their control over the country. These rituals were not just about religious observance. They were about channeling dark forces to maintain authority, to suppress any challenges to the throne, and to control the fate of the kingdom. But what if the tower's darkest secrets are not just confined to the past? What if the building itself, its walls, its dungeons, are still imbued with the energy of the countless tortured souls who once passed through its gates? There are those who believe that the Tower of London is haunted, that the ghosts of its former prisoners still wander its halls, seeking revenge for the injustices done to them. But the real horror lies not in the ghosts, but in what the tower symbolizes: the unchecked power of those who control history, the manipulation of truth, and the erasure of the lives of those who were once deemed insignificant. The Tower of London was not just a prison. It was a symbol of how power, fear, and darkness can converge to shape the future. And as long as the tower stands, the secrets of the past remain locked away, just out of reach. The legend of Vlad the Impaler, also known as Vlad Dracula, is one of the most infamous in history. While he is often remembered as the monstrous figure who inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula, the true story of Vlad the Impaler is far darker and more chilling than any fictional account. Known for his ruthless methods of punishing his enemies, Vlad became infamous for impaling thousands of people. an act of terror that struck fear into the hearts of all who encountered him. But the real question remains, was Vlad the Impaler a mere bloodthirsty tyrant, or was he something more, something darker, even supernatural in nature? Vlad's reign was marked by extreme cruelty. His favorite method of execution was impalement, where victims were slowly impaled on a sharp stake, often left to die in agonizing pain for hours or even days. He was also known for organizing elaborate tortures, where his enemies were flayed alive, burned, or subjected to cruel psychological horrors. While such practices were not uncommon in medieval Europe, the scale and savagery of Vlad's acts were almost unprecedented. But what lies beneath the brutality of Vlad's actions? Some historians suggest that Vlad's cruelty wasn't just about power, it was about something much deeper. Could it be that Vlad was driven by a twisted desire for revenge, a need to avenge the brutal murder of his father and brother? Or could his madness have been rooted in darker forces, ones that pushed him toward unspeakable acts of violence? Rumors surrounding Vlad's connection to the supernatural have persisted for centuries. Some believe that he was a practitioner of dark arts, invoking the powers of darkness to ensure his reign remained unchallenged. There are tales of Vlad using sorcery, casting dark spells to control his enemies, and even manipulate fate itself. His association with the figure of Count Dracula, both in literature and legend, speaks to a more sinister connection to vampirism, a thirst for blood that went beyond simple punishment and into the realm of the occult. Recent investigations into his life and reign suggest that Vlad's brutality was more than a reflection of his desire for power. It was a manifestation of a deeper obsession with immortality, an obsession that led him to cross the line between the human and the supernatural. In his pursuit of eternal power, Vlad may have unknowingly embraced the very darkness that now defines him in legend. Was he merely a tyrant, or was Vlad the Impaler a vessel for a far more sinister force, one that used him to further its own terrifying purposes? The samurai are often depicted as noble warriors, upholding honor, duty, and loyalty to their lords. The image of the stoic, disciplined samurai is deeply ingrained in popular culture, but what is often glossed over is the darker, more brutal side of their culture. Beneath the code of Bushido, the samurai code of ethics, lay a world of violence, bloodshed, and terrifying rituals that define the samurai's existence. To truly understand the samurai, we must first confront the gruesome and disturbing aspects of their lives, aspects that have been hidden away or romanticized in favor of a more palatable narrative. While samurai were known for their discipline and honor, they were also infamous for their deadly combat skills and ruthless efficiency. The samurai's primary role was that of a warrior, and they were trained from an early age to fight, kill, and dominate in battle. However, their rituals went far beyond mere swordplay. The samurai participated in gruesome sacred ceremonies that involved bloodshed and violent rites to ensure they were prepared to face death without fear. One such ritual was seppuku, or ritual suicide, a practice that samurai would resort to when they dishonored themselves, failed in their duty, or were captured by the enemy. This form of death was not considered an escape, but rather a way to preserve one's honor, and it was carried out with brutal precision. In some cases, samurai would participate in a ritualized form of seppuku by disemboweling themselves with a short sword, often in front of an audience, as a sign of their undying loyalty and honor. But there was another side to the samurai's bloodlust that is far less well known. Samurai warriors didn't just fight on the battlefield. They were also tasked with eliminating entire families or villages in order to maintain their master's power. In times of war, samurai would be dispatched to engage in brutal acts of terror, slaughtering not just soldiers, but women, children, and the elderly, without mercy. This was not considered dishonorable. It was a part of their duty, a part of their position as protectors of their lords. The samurai also practiced rituals that involved bloodletting and sacrifice, believing that to truly master the art of combat, they had to appease the spirits of their ancestors. These practices often involved offerings of blood or death, creating an atmosphere where violence and ritual were intertwined. The samurai believed that the spirits of the slain warriors could help guide and protect them in battle, leading to a constant cycle of bloodshed. While the samurai are often remembered for their heroism and virtue, the darker aspects of their culture reveal a much more terrifying truth. These warriors were deeply entrenched in a world of violence, death, and spiritual devotion to bloodshed. The samurai's way of life was not just about honor and duty. It was also about mastering the art of killing, embracing death, and offering up blood to secure power and influence. The assassins, a secretive group that emerged in the Middle Ages, are often remembered for their deadly precision and mysterious methods. Operating in the shadows, they became infamous for their ability to infiltrate enemy ranks, eliminate targets, and vanish without a trace. But beneath their well-known reputation as skilled killers lies a much darker truth, one that involves forbidden rituals, manipulation, and a secret code that has been hidden from history for centuries. The assassins, or Hashashin as they were known in their time, were a group of militant followers of the Nizari Ismaili sect, an offshoot of Shia Islam. Their name, assassin, comes from the Arabic word hashishin, believed to be derived from their rumored use of hashish to induce a trance-like state before going into battle. However, what has been largely ignored in popular retellings of their story is the possibility that their supposed use of drugs was only a small part of the story. The assassins were masters of mental manipulation, psychological warfare, and ritualistic practices that shaped their approach to assassination. What truly set the assassins apart was their unique training methods. Young recruits were subjected to intense psychological conditioning, taught to erase their identities and embrace a new, secret persona. The assassins were not merely trained to kill, they were trained to break their minds free of fear and hesitation, to become perfect tools for their cause. The rituals involved in their training were deeply spiritual, designed to sever any attachments to the material world and immerse the recruits in a world of shadow and secrecy. Many recruits were said to be selected from the poor or dispossessed, promised great rewards in the afterlife for their service. These recruits would undergo a process of ritual initiation, during which they were made to feel as though they were part of something far greater than themselves. It is believed that the assassins would use elaborate illusions and psychological tactics to convince their recruits that they were receiving divine orders from the highest levels of authority, often convincing them to kill without remorse or fear. This manipulation was not just about control. It was about erasing the humanity of the recruits, turning them into perfect instruments of death, who carried out their missions with unflinching loyalty. The assassins were not simply mercenaries. They were ideologically driven, and their belief system involved a complex mix of mysticism, religious devotion, and the pursuit of hidden knowledge. They believed that their actions were part of a larger cosmic struggle, one that required their complete devotion to the cause. And while their training may have focused on physical and mental discipline, it was their manipulation of the mind that made them truly terrifying. Through rituals, psychological tactics, and the promise of divine reward, the assassins became the most feared assassins in history. But what happened when their organization was dismantled? While the assassins' activities were suppressed, their influence and secret knowledge didn't disappear entirely. The remnants of their teachings, practices, and rituals may have survived through secret societies that continued to shape the political and religious landscapes for centuries. Could the assassins have left a legacy of hidden knowledge that still lingers in the shadows of history, waiting to be rediscovered? The Sumerians are often hailed as the world's first great civilization, credited with the invention of writing, the creation of complex legal systems, and the establishment of the first urban cities. Their accomplishments are unparalleled, and the Sumerians laid the very foundations of modern civilization. Yet, despite their profound influence, one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world remains. How did the Sumerians, an advanced civilization at the height of their power, suddenly vanish? By the end of the 3rd millennium BCE, Sumer had become an advanced and thriving society. The city-states, such as Ur, Eridu, and Lagash, were centers of trade, culture, and scientific innovation. The Sumerians had mastered agriculture, developed a written language, cuneiform, and built architectural marvels, including the iconic ziggurats. The Sumerians had everything: knowledge, power, and wealth. Yet, in a shocking turn of events, by the early 2nd millennium BCE, Sumer was largely abandoned, its cities abandoned, its culture erased. What happened? The decline of Sumer has been attributed to a variety of factors: invasions by outside forces, internal strife, environmental collapse, or even natural disasters. But the truth may lie deeper, within the very heart of Sumerian society itself. Recent archaeological discoveries suggest that the Sumerians were caught in a perfect storm of interconnected crises, including prolonged drought, poor agricultural practices, and the loss of vital trade routes. These crises culminated in the abandonment of their once thriving cities. But what if this was not just a natural collapse? Some historians and researchers believe that the Sumerians were dealing with something far darker, a powerful forgotten force. Evidence suggests that the Sumerians had an intricate religious and mystical belief system, one that was heavily tied to their understanding of the cosmos, time, and the gods. These beliefs, while central to their identity, may have driven them to the brink of ruin. Some theories suggest that the Sumerians' obsession with appeasing their gods led them to engage in extreme rituals, perhaps even sacrificing parts of their civilization in an attempt to save themselves. Were the Sumerians too reliant on their divine interpretations of the world? Did they invoke forces that ultimately led to their own destruction? The fall of the Sumerians is not just an isolated incident. It is a story that speaks to the dangers of placing too much trust in supernatural forces, of becoming so entwined with mystical beliefs that the very fabric of society unravels. The Sumerians did not just vanish. They were consumed by their own ambition and their belief in the power of the gods. Could it be that in their pursuit of favor from the gods, they triggered their own demise? The eerie silence of the Sumerian cities may hold the answer to a question we have yet to fully understand. The Knights Templar, an order of warrior monks that rose to prominence during the Crusades, are surrounded by mystery, intrigue, and speculation. Originally founded in the early 12th century, The Templars gained vast wealth, military power, and influence. They were renowned for their secrecy, their role in the Crusades, and their sudden, unexplained fall from grace. But beyond their well-documented history, the Knights Templar were also said to be guardians of forbidden knowledge. Knowledge so powerful and dangerous that it threatened the very foundations of the Church and the state. The Templars were known to possess vast treasures, including lands, money, and relics. But what if the true treasure they guarded was not material wealth, but something far more valuable? Ancient secrets, lost knowledge, and perhaps even a connection to ancient civilizations like the Egyptians, the Sumerians, or the Israelites. The Templars' sudden rise to power, their ability to gather vast wealth, and their mysterious disappearance in the early 14th century have led to countless theories about their true purpose. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Templars is their connection to the Holy Grail. Some scholars believe that the Templars were guardians of the Grail itself, not in the traditional sense of a sacred cup, but as a symbol of hidden knowledge that could change the course of history. The Grail, in this sense, was not just a Christian relic, but a representation of a deeper, more esoteric understanding of the world, an understanding that the Templars may have uncovered during their time in the Holy Land. The Templars were also rumored to have discovered ancient texts and relics during their time in Jerusalem, artifacts that could have changed the understanding of human history. Was the order involved in uncovering the lost teachings of the ancient world? Did they possess knowledge that was so dangerous, so potent, that the Church felt it had to be erased from history? The mysterious trial of the Templars, where many of their members were executed on charges of heresy, may have been an attempt to rid the world of the secrets they were said to possess. Today, the legacy of the Templars lives on in conspiracy theories, secret societies, and the search for hidden knowledge. But what if the truth about the Templars is even darker than we can imagine? What if they were not just guardians of a powerful secret, but vessels for an ancient, forgotten power, one that humanity was never meant to uncover? The Black Death, which ravaged Europe in the 14th century, is one of the most terrifying pandemics in human history. The plague wiped out an estimated 1/3 of Europe's population, causing untold suffering and fear. It is often attributed to the spread of the bacterium Yersinia pestis, carried by fleas on rats. But what if the true origins of the Black Death are far darker, more mysterious, and even supernatural in nature? For centuries, historians have focused on the biological and environmental factors behind the plague, explaining its spread through unsanitary living conditions, the movement of armies, and the proliferation of rats and fleas. However, some scholars believe that the plague may have had a far more insidious origin, one linked to ancient, hidden forces. The idea that the Black Death was a divine punishment, or even a curse, has persisted for centuries. Some have suggested that the plague was not just a natural disaster, but an act of retribution for the sins of humanity, a way to cleanse the world of its corruption. There are also theories that suggest the Black Death was the result of dark rituals, performed by secret societies or occult groups, seeking to harness the power of disease as a weapon. Did these secretive groups use the plague to further their own agendas, to shift the balance of power in Europe, or to invoke a darker force that could change the course of history? The question remains, did the Black Death truly have natural origins, or was it something more? Were there forces at play, whether divine, supernatural, or man-made, that unleashed the plague upon humanity? And if the plague was indeed a curse, who was behind it, and why? The Black Death didn't just kill people, it reshaped the world. It led to social upheaval, economic collapse, and religious fervor. But it also left behind an enduring legacy of fear, superstition, and dark secrets that continue to haunt us to this day. As we journey through the forgotten corners of history, one truth becomes clear. The past is far darker and more complex than we've been taught. What we've uncovered is a tapestry of forgotten civilizations, lost knowledge, and terrifying truths. Truths that have been erased, concealed, or obscured by those in power. The mysteries of the past are not mere curiosities. They are warnings, reminders of what happens when humanity strays too far from the light. From the disappearance of entire civilizations to the horrifying practices of those in power, history has been shaped not only by the actions of kings and conquerors, but by the forces of darkness that have lurked in the shadows. The Sumerians, the Mayans, the Assassins, the Templars. These are not just stories of people lost to time. They are stories of power, obsession, and the dangerous pursuit of knowledge. And perhaps the most terrifying thing we've learned is that these dark forces have not vanished. They still haunt the world today in the form of secret societies, hidden knowledge, and forces beyond our understanding. The curse of the past still lingers, reminding us that the path to progress is often fraught with peril, and that the truth we seek may come at a cost we're not yet prepared to pay. The darkness of history is not something to fear. It is something to acknowledge, to understand, and to learn from. For in the shadows of the past, we find not just terror, but the potential for transformation. It is up to us to face these hidden truths, to reckon with the forces that shaped our world, and to ensure that we do not repeat the mistakes of those who came before us. The journey into the past may be filled with horror and darkness, but it is also a journey of discovery, a journey that forces us to confront the truth of who we are and what we are capable of. And as we walk through the shadows of history, we must remember one thing. The darkness is never truly gone. It is only waiting for the moment when we, once again, turn our gaze toward it.